So I'm Dave.
And I'm Sean.
This is Barstools and Bandtalk, and boy, oh boy, my friend Sean always uses this term, but it's true. We have a barn burner tonight with, I guess, the most paramount talk radio host in Halifax today. We've been on a show just recently. Sean, I'll let you bring him on.
Yeah, I from time to time listen to a lot of talk radio. I've always loved Todd Veinotte. He's got a real dry kind of style. The thing I've always liked about him is whatever his opinion is, and he's not afraid to share it. And so he's a lot of fun. He's a musician too, and we'll cover that. He's a Leafs fan. We're recording this on. I'm gonna predict that the Leafs take the series 4-1 tonight, and Todd will be a very happy man tomorrow. Also want to point out, we got Alex on the show here with us. Alex is doing a bang-up job. Barstools is taking it up a notch, and it's all because Alex's hard work. So thanks a lot, brother.
You're welcome.
Without any further ado, we have News 95.7's own Todd Veinotte.
So you should be here right about
now.
G'day,
there
sir.
he is. Hope your ears weren't burning. We were saying very nice things about you now, Todd.
That's not a good thing.
So I want to start off. So you've been filling in for Rick now for a few weeks, but you've had your own show on the weekends and stuff, and you've kind of dropped in. Have you been getting any feedback from people about your style is obviously very different than Rick's? I had somebody the other day say sometimes with Todd it's like your cranky uncle giving you the finger wag, and I kind of laughed, right? But have you been getting any feedback from Rick's followers about? I think you're doing a great job. I told you the other day I like your style, but you getting any feedback from people?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You get lots of feedback. I think for the most part, I had the good fortune of working with Rick quite a bit. He and I did our face-off, and I sat in for Rick a lot over a couple of years. So I think that was people that kind of connected me with Rick anyway. So it wasn't like bringing somebody brand new in who people didn't know at all. That would be a lot rougher to sit in for Rick, right? Because Rick's got a crazy loyal following. He's a talk show icon, and there's not a lot of those guys around anymore. So I think for the most part, because of that, people have accepted me and put up with me, I guess. But you got people who are going to be, they're just not going to be satisfied anyway. And I'm okay with that, but the point is if somebody's emailing me and they're complaining about what I'm doing, they're at least listening, and that's, if you're not getting any of that, I honestly think you're not doing the job properly. But so to answer your question, yeah, lots of feedback, a lot of people missing Rick, but some love too. So.
Well, I want to ask you a question now, Todd. So I want to know how you get started in talk radio in the first place.
Oh, well, first of all, this is a very different, awkward position for me to be answering questions. I like to ask the questions, as you guys know. No, I'm just kidding. I had the good fortune of producing another talk show icon out of St. John. Rogers News 95.7 once Rogers had two Green brand stations in New Brunswick as well, and they were all sister stations. One was talk radio in St. John, another was Moncton, and I had a regional talk show on all three of them, including News 95.7 for about 4 years. And I inherited that show by producing a guy who was in the kind of similar to Rick, had 50 years experience doing talk show, came out of retirement to help launch the stations, was an absolute talk show icon. Tom Young, he's now passed away, moved back to Newfoundland. But I produced Tom for a couple of years, and sat in for him a bit here and there. But I learned the trade from him. I learned a lot about that. And I often said, any level of success that I've ever had has only been achievable because I had the opportunity to work with a guy like Tom Young for a couple of years, just kind of learning the rhythm of it and how to deal with people and how to validate people and how to know when to do certain things. If you had to learn that on your own, it would be a nightmare, right? So I sat in, or rather I produced him, and then I sat in for him. And then when he retired, I kind of inherited his seat, much in the same way with Rick, because people associated me with this guy for 2 years, producing him, sitting in for him, bantering with him on the air. So people were willing to put up with me in the same way, kind of like Rick. It's funny how that transitioned into that. But so then I hosted talk radio for that show for about 4 years, and Roger sold those two New Brunswick stations. And that was kind of the end of my talk show legacy until they moved me to Halifax. A few years later, I was doing some VJing stuff for Global News and some other stuff, podcasting. And they moved me to Halifax to do a weekend show, which I was happy to do, quite honestly. I was just glad to be back in talk radio. And Rogers, once again, after a couple of years with this pandemic, blew out 3/4 of the staff and the station, and just no revenue, right? And in fairness to the company. But now Rick, of course, has had his health issues, and I'm back for a while anyway. So that's kind of my boring story.
So, I mean, you run the gamut when you're and Rick's the same thing. I mean, like, there's a lot of topics, you get a lot of time to fill, but how much prep do you put into deciding what a show is going to be? Because I've heard Rick, when he's on the air, talking about, he starts very early in the morning. And how many days out, or is it just kind of the day before that you kind of start putting the thing together?
Yeah, well, I mean, these are good questions. I mean, first of all, Rick put in way too many hours, in my opinion, for goodness sakes. He was there at 4 a.m. I never figured that out, to be completely honest with you. He did at 4 a.m. When I first got into producing talk radio for Tom Young, I would produce the show. Actually, he would give me some story ideas, some content that he liked, but over half of it would be the producer's job to pull all that together, to schedule it all, and it's an immense amount of work. But with time, for whatever reason, producers got away from doing that. They became operators at the controls, during the live show, but they didn't book anything, and they still don't. Because they work in the newsroom and do other things, and it's just lean and mean. So as the host, you also have to produce everything, meaning you got to book everything, you got to schedule everything, you got to get all the ideas. So my process is pretty simple. I've got some go-to people that I like to have some regulars on, who I just have developed relationships over the years. There's often topics that'll come up, and I know exactly who I want to talk to, whether it be a Wayne McKay, a law professor at Dal, or whatever it is. You get those go-to people. But my other process is I'll go through about 9 or 10 news-related websites, the Chronicle Herald, whatever it is, some obscure stuff, every morning, and whatever, if I see a headline that grabs my interest that says that would be good talk radio, then I'll copy and paste the website. I'll list them all. Once I go through all of that, then I go through everything and I start finding names, finding emails, finding numbers. It's very laborious, right? And it's a lot of the work. So quite honestly, the majority of my time is spent doing that stuff, and prepping the show and getting ready for the show, and the lineup comes last. That's the last thing I do. And oftentimes I don't have enough time to really do it the way I want. But that also lends itself to a good conversation sometimes too, when you're not over prepped. I read everything through a couple of times, and then at some point you just kind of put it away and you say, okay, I've absorbed as much of that as I can. The guest is coming on. Sometimes you have no idea what you're going to ask them when they start. Usually I don't really quite know what I'm going to go at, and it just kind of happens.
That's right.
So it's just, it's like performing, guys. You know what that's like, right? Sometimes you're feeling something, and if you overthink it, it's just not going to happen, right? So that's my process. But it's the producing, and the script, and the lineup writing, and the finding people's emails and phone numbers and all of that back and forth. Is not that I'm complaining, because it's still better than a lot of things people do. But it's you have to be extremely organized, efficient, and you have to really be a hard worker to get the job done every day.
Well, you sure do a good job. Now, it's funny because I would think of Rick's tagline, and it always touches me. If you're not enraged, then you're not paying attention. And it's true. Sean has a lot more tolerance for this than I do, because if I go through a full 5-week period or 5-day period and I listen to 95.7 while I'm driving around, I'll get that angry and that upset. Like it just drives me crazy. I'm wondering how you do it. How do you maintain your composure with some of the guests that call into your show? Half of them I want to throttle. Half of your guests I want to throttle. I don't know how you do it, brother. Like, I don't understand.
Well, I mean, I'm half the type people want to throttle me. So, and I know that, right? Quite honestly, I separate myself from what's going on. It's like, if you guys know what it's like, you're out playing gigs and you might be in the shittiest mood you've ever been in your life, and things aren't going good, but you know what? When the lights come on and everybody's having a good time, and they want the band to be into it, and whether your day's sucking or not doesn't matter, right?
It's your job then, yeah. It's your job.
Right?
Yeah.
And you learn as a pro from guys like Tom Young and Rick Howe that you just answer it every day, and you let that stuff happen. And when the show's done, you say, it's just another show. None of that meant anything other than that. Next, right? It's just, you can't get too wrapped up in it. You can't take it too personally. You can't take yourself too seriously. You know, it's at the end of the day, it is what it is. It's an important job, but it's not who I am. It's what I do, and I just separate it in that way.
You can, eh? Okay, cool.
So I used to love listening to the Face Off, and I remember one. I don't remember exactly when it was, but it had something to do with you were debating Rick about Justin Trudeau, and Rick was basically saying you're blue, and you were saying, well, you're a Trudeau fan, and it was funny because you just kept you were going, come on, but you weren't doing it in a mean way, and Rick was getting worked up, and I was thinking like, hey, were you in the studio and you guys like kind of come to blows when you're in there? But it was really funny because it was just like sharp circling the you had him, and you knew you had him, and you said a couple Trudeau things a couple times, and it was great radio because it was a good little joust there for a good 2-3 minutes.
Yeah, well, I mean, when that's done, we sit there and laugh, right? You know, when we go to break, it's like, Rick loves it. That's what he wants. You know, he wants that acrimony. He wants that rigid whatever that people like to listen to. And Rick's another example of somebody who gets it and doesn't take it personally. It's not about me or Rick. It's about entertaining. Like Katie Hartai, who left recently as the producer of the show to work for CBC. We had a conversation the last day on the air, and I said to her, I said, Katie, I said, what do you think is the most important thing that you do in this talk radio? And she said, inform people. I said, no, that's not what it is. It's you entertain people. And if you're not entertaining them, then you're not informing them because they're not going to listen. It's really as simple as that. You know, we can have this lofty goal of we're in the information business, and this is what we do. We elevate people with our intellect. No, you entertain them. You introduce conversations and dialogue, and sometimes it's ugly, sometimes it's great, sometimes it's boring, sometimes it's not, but that's what you do. The goal is to entertain people. So Rick gets that, right?
Yeah. Speaking of entertaining, now I understand you're a bit of a musician yourself. Now, I did not know that.
Yeah, I've played a lot over the years. I'm from St. John and lived in New Brunswick around the province and did a lot of gigging, a lot of not to the, I would say, extent that you guys have done. I've never been signed to a label or anything like that. But I consider myself a competent player. I love playing. I've played with some amazing musicians over the years. I've been very lucky to play with some great players. And I've played with some guys who aren't great too, and always had fun, right? And so I enjoy it. I play with a band in Halifax here called Iron Wheel. They do all original kind of Americana blues stuff, which is a nice change for me because I've not played that type of music. So I'm a guitar player, bass player, and I love to sing, and I consider myself a good harmony singer. So yeah, but it always amazes me how much talent's around, right? It's just like the Maritimes in general, you guys know this, is just like there's just crazy players everywhere. Like
everywhere. Yeah, you're so right. Yeah. You're so right.
They had today they were talking about the 7th New Brunswick kind of open back up, and everybody except Nova Scotians, which I was supposed to play Dolan's Pub that weekend. Fredericton. Yeah, so that's probably not going to happen till July. But you mentioned St. John. One of the bars that I absolutely love and have played all kinds of times is O'Leary's. We always had so much fun there.
Yeah,
I'm from St. John, so you're speaking to me right now.
There you go. Yeah, no, O'Leary's is great. I've played O'Leary's not on the Saturday nights when he brings in the out of town bands, the hot shots from Halifax like you guys. But we get some front room stuff at O'Leary's, and the odd time when a Halifax band would have to cancel, he would resort to us. No, it's I love playing. It's great. But you guys know what it's like. It's a grind sometimes to do some of those gigs, and you're out till 4 a.m. and you're lugging gear, and I ain't getting younger. I don't know about you guys, but it's but it's still fun to do. But that desire for me to be a working, gigging guy for the $150 or $200 that my ilk of bands would get a night each, would not. I'm not sure that I'm motivated to do that anymore, to be honest with you.
I think last time we did that, we played at Cheers, and I think we finished at 4:00 and got home at 4:45. I had to work at 8:30. It's like, you know what, fellas, this is not my gig anymore. But it's still like that. The Ale House is still a late night, is it, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a band. David and I are in a band. Sorry, go ahead, Todd.
Dolan's is a late night, is it not?
2:00. Dolan's is a bagger because I love playing that place, but it's 3 55-minute sets.
Exactly.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So
I hit the T. Somewhere between.
I play in town, it's 45, so we're kind of spoiled in Halifax. So 355s, but I'll tell you, pound for pound, one of my favorite places. Barry Hughes that owns that place, and his staff are just amazing. Great people that go there. And like I said, I saw that today that they weren't opening. They're opening in the 7th, but not to West Nova Scotia. So it kind of broke my heart a little bit because Fredericton's it's like a vacation when we go and play there. It's just so much fun.
It's a great city. It's a great
spot. Oh, yes. And, it's funny because Barry, we went there one time, and I don't know if you've ever met Barry or not, but he's a funny guy. And so we go to the bar, and he says, have you guys ever been to the farmer's market? And it's like, Barry, I've been to Dolan's, and I've been to the apartment that we stay at. That's pretty much it. Because you're playing, and then you get back late, and you might have a few pops, and you sleep in, and, so you don't have it. It's not as sexy as what everybody thinks it is.
Yeah.
It's a series of long naps in the afternoon to get ready to play for the night, right?
Yeah. It's fun, though.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, that particular band, Dave and I are in a band that we started with Barstools called Side Hustle, but I'm in a band called The Frequency. And one year we played 85 shows. And and we're all part-time guys, if you will. So it can be a grind, but it keeps you young sometimes too.
That's right, Todd. So you still playing it all, Todd? Or
I still play. Yeah, I still play. Like I said, I'm playing bass with that band. I do a lot of, I'm playing a lot of acoustic right now. That was my roots, kind of acoustic. I got into a lot of electric over the years with the bands, but I love playing the old stuff like James Taylor and
fun.
All that stuff. I'm a big Grateful Dead fan.
Okay.
Been to a few of their shows back in the day when Jerry was kicking around.
Nice.
I still play, absolutely. As long as I have the ability to make the guitar do anything at all, I'll always be at it, right?
Well, we'll have to make a date now to have a little jam session now between the three of us here, anyhow.
That would be my absolute honor.
Yeah, no, we would.
I love to sing. I'd love that. I love to sing harmony. If you're ever wanting to have somebody over to lay in some harmony, I'm your guy. I love her.
Perfect.
As soon as we can get Dave's actually at the jam space where we practice. So as soon as we can open it up again, absolutely, we'll get you over and we'll have some fun. It's always fun.
The funny thing is that I was kind of vocalists only who didn't play instruments. Like you got your odd Robert Plant, David Lee Roth, and some of these guys that can pull that off, but we never knew any real vocalists around there. There was always somebody in the band playing something, sang. That was me, right?
Yeah.
But I always thought that'd be a sweet gig just to be a vocalist. Show up with your mic and rock out and watch. Then the band does all the work, and that'd be kind of fun if you had the vocal chops to do it.
Well, we got a girl singer in this band, Michelle Ryder, her name is, in the Side Hustle band, and she is just that. She's just all that. She just brings her vocal prowess.
Yeah.
And that's just trying to keep up. And
I think that's cool because having that front person not playing something they can devote to that commitment to that vocal and to the performance. There's a reason why the Robert Plant exists without an instrument, right?
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah.
Yep.
I want to shift gears a little bit before we do, you're a bass player, you said. Are you a bass player that does or doesn't load gear?
Oh, I got to load gear, man. You always got the big 15-inch cabinet speaker.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess I'm going to get you on another segment to do a seminar on bass players loading gear because I don't play with too many bass players that load gear. So.
It's always the guitar players that don't want to lug anything.
Yeah, that's right.
Who it usually is.
So hitting on the chicks. Hey, yeah, you can rap cables with me, baby. You can rap cables with me.
So shifting gears just a little bit here, Todd. So obviously, the last year we've been in this whole deal here, and it kind of looks like there's a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. But how have you found? And I talked to you about this the other day, when we talked about it. From somebody that's in the media that's covering this stuff on a regular basis, and you have people that are calling in. How have you found the communication that goes out to the public and B, the communication that you experience in order to kind of get the right answers has been?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not been good at all. But unfortunately, it's people's expectations, I think, of communications of government in general right now isn't what it should be, because we've kind of entered this era where there's this portion of the population that believes it's patriotic at this point to do and listen to everything government says, and right. You should not question Dr. Strang, and what are you questioning the Premier for? They're taking care of us, they're keeping us safe, and this type of. But the reality is that these are people who we questioned every step of the way in good times, and they made plenty of mistakes in good times. Now that we know they were good times, couldn't get much right, procurement, whatever. Yeah. So now suddenly we're under crucial times right now, and the idea is they're going to be perfect right now and beyond criticism. So one of the criticisms, I guess, would be is that they've not communicated well, because they really haven't. I don't want to say haven't had to, but there's no the opposition doesn't have a voice right now. The ledge does not sit. The ledge didn't sit for a year, for goodness sakes. I mean, the McNeil government wrapped up and went home and said, we're this COVID, we are no longer operating anymore. I mean,
you still get paid, but we're not operating.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. It's I don't know, and that's the other thing is that I'll defend in many cases the public sector. I'm not a member of the public sector, obviously, never have been, but I'll defend those who work in the public sector because I would take advantage of the situation too if I had one of those jobs. But the reality is nobody in the public sector has taken a haircut in any way. I've not known of one layoff in any municipality, any province, the federal government, not one. And, meanwhile, businesses have been shuttered. People have paid the price. I've lost a job. I'm an example directly of somebody who's been hit in this. So, the communication, I guess, how do you communicate that? You say we're all in this together, but the reality is it's not but I'm not bitter about it. Like I said, it's not personal for me. Again, back to that, people who have that opportunity, I would love to have a good federal government job where I don't have to worry about getting laid off in times like this. But the reality is that a lot of other people have that worry.
Yeah.
And, so it's back to the communication, I guess. It's not been good. Businesses have not been told in advance much of anything, what to expect. How do you operate bars? How do you operate restaurants? How do you, even this bubble, we're talking about this bubble. Well, you know what? It could not, maybe it doesn't happen. Like you can't count on anything right now, right? So
that's a question I had for you, because now tomorrow will be the 28th of May, and that's supposed to be the big, of course, it always happens on a Friday, so you can't complain because the weekend comes up. The big announcement is supposed to come tomorrow for what the reopen of the provinces. I want to get your predictions, Todd, because you are immersed in this shit. Like, Todd or Sean listens to it every day. I listen to it when I can. But you are absolutely immersed in this every single day, 24/7. So what do you think is going to happen tomorrow?
Well, I think they're going to promise, and they're going to set dates. They're going to set targets, but it's going to be with the caveat of if this happens, if, and 10 ifs. And you know what? We just don't know what's going to happen. So what I've been suggesting that needs to happen is they need to say, look, we've got our vaccination rates. We've got empirical data right now. We know where we're trending. This is the number that we're going to be at. You could pretty much nail it by July, whatever.
Yep.
Say if it's 75%, whatever it is, this is what the epidemiology, this is what the science has been telling us all along. So no matter what, folks, if numbers spike a bit here and there or whatever this summer, we are doing this bubble. We're going to have to make this work because we need it. Businesses, it's going to happen. But they won't say that. They'll say if cases don't go up, if. So you can't take that to the bank. If you're in business or you're relying on anything, or you want to book reservations or anything, you can't rely on any of that. So I think they'll lay out a big plan, but you know what? It could all go out the window like that.
And the thing is, too, when they give guidance, and Sean, this takes it back to when I sort of first met you, when I was challenging the province on things about closures, I would ask them questions, and they would come back with very vague, wide open answers so that you could never, ever pin it down to saying, well, if you were to get a fine or something, you have evidence from the government saying, oh, well, you could do this. No, they would gate it in a way that it could always be judged 10 different ways.
Yep.
I just wanted to add that in because they're never clear on it.
Never clear on it. And this whole thing has been in many ways just a contradiction of contradictions. I mean, this is nothing. I'm not breaking any news here. You guys all know this. But when you can go into pretty much packed stores, and there have been packed stores, Costco reports across the board, loaded. Right, Walmart's, go down the list, and these people are operating.
Food courts.
Yeah, the food courts. And a guy can't operate his business, or a guy or woman can't operate their business with one in the store at a time to buy a guitar, or Long and McQuaid, or that's not essential, right?
Absolutely.
I don't think they're open. I don't know if they are or not, but they're probably not open.
Curbside,
but if a nursery can be open, or rather a greenery or whatever to go buy plants, which is fine, but I need my music fix. Where's my music store, right? And so people are making these stupid rules that make no friggin' sense, right?
It's just inequality, and this is what we talk about all across the board. It's like if it was the same for everybody, it'd be great. But I'm in commission sales. What about somebody who's a travel agent? How's your business doing? Well, how about how about the churches? How about the pastor of a church? How's he doing right now? You can't have social gatherings. Every industry is suffering, but not every person is suffering the same way, and that's what bugs me. Now our friends who are only play music for a living, they have no income, zero, nothing.
And it's even beyond that. It's the momentum you lose for a year plus building up your customer, your client base. I mean, if you're in sales and you're used to working that network, you might have lost a half of those people.
That's right.
Bands that were doing Dolans in these places, maybe they've broken up, maybe somebody couldn't stick around or whatever, and you've lose. So now you got to try and restart that over again. People, it's immeasurable the damage here that's happened with this stuff. And
there was a segment, Todd, that you had on your show that I want to ask you about in a second, because I was getting ready to listen to it. It was last week, and then I had to go into a sales meeting. But the one thing I think that when all this stuff is going to be very off-putting for me is when I go downtown to a bar the first time and I see all these politicians backslapping and drinking beer during happy hour and patting themselves on the back for all the good work that they've done. And I'm not saying all of them, but you nailed it, where, they don't have any skin in the game because they haven't lost anything. And, when the Premier makes the comment, I understand you guys haven't had an income for the month of May. Well, how do you understand that when you have? Yeah. But what are you were covering a point about an email that Dr. Strang sent out to the MLAs, and I was about to listen to the segment and I had to leave. Touch on that a little bit, because that was very interesting.
Well, he sent a letter out to MLA saying if people want to get exemptions for travel, if memory's serving me correctly, travel exemptions to get into the province, or family members or any of that type of a scenario, do not, if people contact you, MLA, do not entertain that. Just basically point them to the website, which gives them the rules. Don't do any legwork for them, because we're not allowing any of this. And Tim Houston, rightfully so, and I'll criticize Tim Houston like I'll criticize anybody, and I do, but I'll also point out if I agree with something one of these guys or girls does, took exception to that and said that, you got no right, Dr. Strang, to be telling me or any MLA not to do some legwork for their constituent. That's why we are here.
That's their job.
That's right. And if a constituent reaches out to me as an MLA and says, look, I got an issue with travel exemptions, I want some help, and I entertain that, and they got a case, I'm going to go to bat for them. I'm not going to not do that because you told me to, Dr. Strang. That is overreach big time, right? And to me, that's a cut and dry case of this ain't right. And I don't see it. There's some things are black and white, and to me, that's crossing the line.
Well, we've heard this story a few times where people are like, hey, do they have too much power now? Hey, are we getting close to martial law? Hey, what about all these things? I guess nobody wants the job. Nobody foresaw a global pandemic 2 years ago, but it's here, and they're getting paid exceptional amount of monies to be an exceptional thinker outside the box, and they deserve to be a little bit more accountable than they have been. That's all our point has been. We put a petition forth. It's okay. Just meet with the people who are matter, like they matter. These people matter. Please hear their voice. And crickets. So what are you going to do?
Well, Dr. Strang has become a pop icon almost in the province. Like,
I think I heard something called Strangism the other day. They've called it.
Yeah. And I don't know. That's a good thing, right? A public health officer should not be a personality, in my opinion. He sits along the premier every day, and it's like, who's in charge here? Which one of these people? One is elected by the people. And one is a public servant that's done this job, hired to do this job, and not democratically accountable. Who is making these decisions? And I think that is a legitimate question to ask. And I think that Dr. Strang, through his premier, does, and it's not conspiracy theorizing or anything like that. It's just seeing it, observing this, and looking at this dynamic of how they, and it's the same in all provinces now. The public health officer and the premier, these are the two most powerful people in the province right now, in every province in Canada. And I think that's when we've got a legislative assembly, we've elected 55 of these people to represent the people in the province, and the power rests so heavily on these massive decisions on two people, one not elected. I see that as a potential problem at the very least.
Yeah.
And I think, like or not like Stephen McNeil, I think the feeling he always got from him was that he was a tough guy. Obviously you saw him kind of lose his cool a little bit sometimes, but Ian Rankin gets in there and you just kind of get the feeling that he's almost getting rolled in some of these meetings. I just don't have a solid feeling that he's going to stand up and, let's call it what it is. He wasn't elected premier. He was elected by his party to become premier. So maybe that's weighing on it too. But I don't get the feeling he goes into a room and throws down and comes, you know what I mean?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Ian Rankin is, you know what? I didn't know much about him before he was the premier, and I still don't know much about him. He was this nondescript kind of low key guy. So when he got elected, I thought to myself, okay, well, let's see what this guy must be dynamic. He won the leadership of the Liberal Party, and he must have something going for him. And I haven't seen it. Quite honestly, I've not seen anything to me that would say, wow, this guy's a standout politician, or he is very, very timid at this point. And I think Dr. Strang is probably controlling that relationship.
Well, it's funny you said that. You said you're talking about Dr. Strain and you talked about his premier. Like, that's an interesting choice of words.
Yeah. But hang on, Stephen. Yeah, that's right. Stephen McNeil was a personality.
Oh yeah,
pop icon almost again, similar.
Stay the blazes hole.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you get the complete antithesis of that in this guy, and Dr. Strang is filling that vacuum. I would say is probably what's happening.
Yeah.
So we want to be respectful of your time, sir, because we know there's a big game coming on. So I'd like you to do two things. One, you're going to do the first one last. I want you got a couple axes behind you there, so I want you to show our viewers exactly what I'm seeing over your shoulder.
Okay, sure. This guy here is my 74 SG.
Nice,
which is an absolute beauty. I love this thing. What else do I got? My acoustic that I have right here now is this Yamaha. You can't go wrong with the Yamaha guitar, right?
You're right. You can't kill it. You can't kill it. You're right.
You can't kill it, and it always works. And to that, my bass is also a Yamaha. This is a nice bass.
Nice.
Yeah, and I just got I'll show you one more. This is just a Squier Telecaster, but I bought it when I was 16, and this is if this thing could talk, boys, I would be in trouble. I'll tell you that.
Nice.
Usually say that about SGs, but
yeah, but I bought that when I was 16. The SG I got when I was in my 40s, so it didn't have nearly as much fun as the Tele did.
Beautiful. Now here we go. I said you're a smart man. You're going to go and watch this hockey game here, and I always joke around. I don't know if you know what's worse than a Leafs fan, and that'd be an ex-Leafs fan. So that's me. I don't have a horse in the race, so I really don't care. Who's winning this game tonight?
Well, before I ask you that, when did you drop the Leafs?
I dropped the Leafs when they hired Mike Babcock, truthfully.
Oh, is that right, eh? Man, he could be a bust, eh? $5 million a year, man.
And I just found that the team kind of
It's only money.
A little bit of I just found they get a little bit too skilled, but when they couldn't protect their stars and they just made a choice to kind of move some guys out of there to do that. I didn't like it. I understand that's where the game was going and they had to kind of collect some of those guys, but Babcock's just a caricature, right? So
he won the cup in Detroit. Those teams were just unbelievable, those players that he had, right? So
they were.
Well, there you go. So you gave up on them. I almost quit. Well, you know what? I've given up a lot on the Leafs when they lost to Boston, when they were up in Game 7 in Boston, 4-1 with 12 minutes to go. Could have eliminated the mighty Bruins, who I think went on to win the cup that year. And they choked and gave up 3 goals and lost in overtime. I kind of checked out then. But you know what? If the Leafs were ever to win the Stanley Cup, it would be in a year in which they couldn't celebrate with a parade, which would be this year.
Fitting. So fitting.
Okay. So I'm saying that just to be dicks, they're going to win the cup this year.
With socially distanced flipping and burning cars, right?
6 feet apart. 6 feet apart.
That's right.
On.
No fans in the stands. That'll be the Leafs going around with the Stanley Cup going, woo.
I've never thought of that perspective before. That's hilarious. So, okay, so who's winning the game tonight?
Leafs will win tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they'll win tonight. They're a better team than Montreal. Montreal's just not they don't have a lot going on there.
We'll talk about another 2 weeks or so. Let's see if we can get some more predictions there. Todd, we really appreciate you coming on our show, and thank you so much for having us on our show. I mean, Sean and I talk about this a lot. We knew when we first started Barstools and Bandtalk, it was kind of to be a positive distraction of all the crap that was going on. It was shortly after the Portapic murders had happened, and obviously in the middle of the global pandemic. But we wanted to have a positive site where people just to kind of lose themselves for a little while, maybe reflect, have some memories of the old days, talk about some music, just fun things. But we knew that we were in a negative news cycle, and when we tried to kind of get our brand out there, nobody would take a chance on us. You did, Sheldon McLeod did, Rick Howe did, Liz Rigney did. There's a few that Tom Bedell from Q4, but it was hard to do that. So we want to thank you for kind of including us on your forum too.
Oh, no, absolutely. It's great. And I'll definitely, we'll keep in touch and anytime. And I'd love to have you guys back on. Anytime you want to complain and bitch and moan about the government, you get a hold of me and I'll get you on the Rick Howe Show.
You have my email address now. You have my email address. I can go on for hours.
To Dave's point, Todd, because you've been so nice to us, that's why we're going to get you into Jam. And it will.
Yeah.
I'd love to.
You got to bring the telly and you got to bring the SG though.
Okay, yeah. No sweat, man. No sweat.
Absolutely.
Right. Thanks so much.
Okay,
all right, go Leafs, go.
Peace out, brother. Peace out.
Take care.
All right, take care, man.
Barstools